Time crystals break the laws of thermodynamics, changing jobs mid-career, and the brilliance of Dr. Fraser Crane. All that and more coming up on Heat Exchanger. Okay, and welcome to this episode of the Heat Exchanger podcast. This week's episode brought to you by the ternary phase diagram. The only thing it ever taught you was what the word ternary means. Hello, Vince. How you doing today?
Hey, Jake. I'm doing well. Haven't seen you in a week and a half, I guess.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm well. You know, I've enjoyed a little bit of a vacation, so we haven't had a chance to record anything. To spend some time up at the family cottage. I call it the family cottage. Really, it's my mom and dad's place that I crash at sometimes. I have no skin in that game whatsoever, but I appreciate it nonetheless. So,
Did you play any board games?
yeah, geez, what a great question. Just jumping right in, eh? So going back to our discussion last week, we did play some board games. The game that sticks out to me the most is definitely Code Names. So we did play some Code Names with my parents. So my parents were there for the first few days, and then they pieced out and gave the place to Laura and I for a few days just to do some traveling around, go to the nearby beaches and do some shopping and stuff, just, you know, little couples getaway. But before they left, we did play a few games of Code Names, and I'll tell you, sometimes those games, they're just like mind-blowing. Like, they can be domestically dangerous. It's like the animosity that's generated playing a game of Code Names in my family is pretty funny. But, you know,
Is it just the four of you playing Code Names?
yeah, it's just the four, because I don't know, we like to play those games. We play some Puerto Rico sometimes and some Settlers or whatever, but for some reason or another, it was Code Names this time, is that we played a lot. So it was just one person gave the clue, the other person had to guess like the words, and
That makes it worse.
it's so bad. Like, because sometimes somebody gives a good clue, and in retrospect, okay, so like, you know, my dad will give a clue, and in retrospect, sure, it's a fine clue, it makes sense. But it just might be that I just don't get it, right? Like, you just don't get it the first time, and so you struggle with it. And my dad, I think at one point, was so frustrated with me for not getting his like good clue that on his next turn, so like the first turn I took a guess and I got it wrong or whatever, so on his next turn he was so mad he just gave me the same clue again. He refused to give me something different.
Just to spite you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, oh man. But yeah, between that and Laura and my mom, so Laura and my mom tend to play together too, and they're like simpatico. It's incredible. Like, there could be two words on the board that are like dog and marbles, and my mom will say tuna, and Laura will get both for some reason, like just magically. Because dogs are related to cats that like tuna, and, you know, marbles, tuna choke on marbles in the ocean or something. Like, that'll be the reason, and that will be the correct reason, by the way, and then they will win the game and I get mad. So there you go. What have you been up to?
I mean, not much. I mean, Ember has been going on, so I've been busy with that. But other than that, with the family, we've been doing day trips. Last week we went to the ROM with the kids, so that was nice. You know, seeing some dinosaur bones and what else is there? Mummies and things like that. So the kids enjoy it. And then a couple of weeks ago, we went to the aquarium. So just all of those day trip kind of thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I love aquariums. I think we've talked about this before, but not on the show. Is like, aquariums to me are like amazing, because I think I definitely have a fear of deep water. Like, I don't like being in deep water. It's not like a crippling fear or something, but like, if you were to say, hey, do you want to go on a scuba trip? I'd be like, I don't know. You know, I'd have to think about it pretty hard, but I love the aquarium because I think that underwater life is pretty sweet. There can be some really cool things, and aquariums are usually quite the spectacle to me, because it's something that, having grown up in like the Hamilton area, or I guess a little north of the Hamilton area as a kid, like, never got really exposed to any tropical underwater wildlife or Arctic like anything like that, right? So aquariums are always a good time. So
Yeah. Well, unlike you, I actually have a fear of water. I cannot swim. That's why I'm taking my kids to swimming lessons so that they can actually swim, but I can't swim. But we still like underwater life. My kids have been watching this show that teaches them underwater life, so they got excited seeing octopuses and things, or octopi, I guess that's the right word.
Sure.
And kelp and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, good old
sharks.
kelp, man. If you can't get excited by kelp, then you can't be in marine biology. Way to go, Vince. Way to give a shout out to kelp there. That's great. But yeah, no, that's pretty good. And you're the second person I've talked to recently that's gone to the zoo. Excuse me, not the zoo, the ROM. Yeah, same thing, right? Dinosaur bones in the zoo, whatever. But yeah. So I'm back. There's been a few things going on in the news since I've been gone. So we're going to talk about a couple of them now. We're going to start out with a little bit of chemical engineering in the news. And this is some very recent development, by the way. This article came out yesterday. And so to our listeners that are not familiar, I'll give you a little bit of background flavor. I think it was 7 years ago, right, Vince, that there was a disaster. It was an environmental disaster in British Columbia in Quesnel Lake, and it was the Mount Poly tailings mine collapse. So, tailings pond collapse, not the mine itself. So, just for a little bit of context, there's a mining operation up in Mount Poly. It's gold and copper. So it's a gold and copper mine, and a lot of the different methods for extracting gold and copper from soil and from things that aren't just like raw ores, or you can do smelting, but you can also do chemical leaching and that sort of thing. So they do a lot of that in this mine. And 7 years ago, what happened was that, the typical process, right, Vince, for dealing with the effluent or the outflow of the leaching fluids and also just wash water, like you need a lot of wash water and stuff, is you have this thing, it's called a tailings stream. And the tailings are literally just like the leftover refuse of all this mixed in water, typically not terribly like toxic in and of itself. Like it could have some metals in it, it could have some heavy metals in it, it could have some residual acids or whatever left in it, but it tends to not be that bad. But what it is it's just like muck, right? It's just mud. And the way to treat that, and this is a shout out to David Latulip in our department, is like you have to do industrial wastewater treatment by settling those tailings. So you got this like, cloudy water full of like crud. And the strategy is to just put it all in a lake, a man-made lake, like a quarry lake or something, and just let it sit there. And like anybody knows, if you have been to a lake or whatever, you stomp around in the sand on the beach, is it like gets all cloudy because the sand gets kicked up. And then if you leave it long enough, it'll clear out and it'll settle down. And the idea here is that it settles to the bottom and you can skim the water off the top and you can reuse that water in your process so that you're not just taking it out of the river or whatever. And that's that. And the shout out to Latulip, by the way, is that his group works on things like flocculant development. So you add these water soluble polymers that kind of aggregate that sand into bigger clumps so that they fall down faster. And that's pretty great. So they do good work there. But Vince, 7 years ago, what happened? What happened?
Yeah, it says, reading the article, is this, more than 70 million cubic meter of water and 8 million cubic meter of tailing effluent. And there's, heavy metal, toxic copper, gold waste. I guess the dam broke, and then all that water and tailing flowed into the lakes and the streams. And the bigger issue here is that it's not just like a random place, right? Like it's a water source for salmon spawning ground and just the whole region, a drinking water source as well. So it had huge impacts. Actually, it's probably the biggest disaster of this sort in Canada's history. So it was quite a big deal, right? So
yeah. And I do have a little bit of context. And again, this comes, I think, from Ryan LaRue, saying that the number that you gave there is a staggeringly big number, but of course it helps to put a little bit of context in terms of what that looks like. So you said 17 million cubic meters of water and 8 million cubic meters of tailings effluent, which is basically mud, right? That's what we're coming down to, for a grand sum total of 25 million cubic meters of stuff, right? Which is the equivalent, I think, to a little bit over 8 Rogers Center's worth. So if you were to fill the Rogers Center with water to the top and dump it into a lake or into a stream or a river, and then do that another 7 times, and then do that all at once, that's the equivalent of the amount of industrial wastewater. Like, let's call it what it is, right? It's tailings, it's industrial wastewater. It's not good. It shouldn't be returned to the environment. It just kind of flowed in. And if you look at any of the pictures, some of them are
just
pretty staggering, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got like islands being formed where there used to just be land, and it's just literal, just like it's like beige. Everything is just beige. It's just gross, right? So
beige and green because of the copper, right? So
So anyway, bad look. And anybody that's listening is probably like, okay, well, that happened 7 years ago. Why the hell are you talking about it right now? Well, you have a great question, and thank you for paying attention up to this point. And the answer is because 2 of the engineers responsible for the design of that tailings pond, right? So for the structural engineering and the civil engineering of that tailings pond have actually finally been charged with professional misconduct by the professional engineers body in BC. So in Ontario, we have the equivalents PEO, right? Professional Engineers Ontario. And this is a good segue to talk a little bit about the profession of engineering and the accountability, right? So the people, we're not going to name any names. You can see, an article yourself if you're interested, but the head engineer was charged the maximum fine possible by the engineering body, which is $25,000, which doesn't seem like very much considering the impact, but that's the maximum fine to an individual. Now, of course, if you're doing professional engineering work on behalf of a company, that company needs to have insurance and a C of A. And what ends up happening there is that the company or the contracting company that issued the engineer is responsible for the damages there. So even though the engineer themselves was charged $25,000 and also found guilty of professional misconduct, so they lost their license, right? So we know that as a professional engineer, you can lose your license. The company was also charged. Vince, do you know how much they were charged for?
$100 million.
$100 million.
Yeah.
There you go. So the company that hired the contracting company was charged $100 million through their insurance in order to fund cleanup efforts. And us, the taxpayers of Canada, probably more so the taxpayers of BC, were also
probably busy. BC,
yeah, we're also charged. No, it depends on if it was a federal cleanup or a provincial cleanup. But the idea is that there was a $40 million subsidy from the government of Canada to help clean that up. So casual $140 million thrown away to clean up quite the mess. And
just to add to that, though, right? Like the head engineer got charged $25,000, but he also paid $107,000 in legal costs.
Yeah.
So
there you go. So yeah, the classic lawyers. Oh, so. Yeah, we can guarantee you the minimum payment, but it's going to cost you 4 times that much in legal fees, right? So, it's a tough look. It's just a classic. It's a classic example. It's the kind of example that they use all the time in training for ethical and professional misconduct dilemmas, where I believe the junior engineer was given kind of the authority to sign off on some drawings and on some calculations that they didn't have the experience in on behalf of the more experienced person who ended up paying the legal fees that we just talked about. And of course, that's an unacceptable practice, right? So that's deferral of responsibility and also giving somebody responsibility that when so it's negligence, I think is what it would come down to, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know all the details of it, but definitely negligence. And I think it's for the students that listen to this, right? It's a very common thing, right? Where you're taking on a task that's maybe a little bit beyond what your experience is, right? And what I say in let's say my 2G class, I was like, well, like just be very upfront with your employer or your boss and be like, hey, like this is beyond my scope right now, right? And it's okay to do that because you have a duty to recognize where your expertise is, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I've been talking a little bit about recently over the last, especially brought on by the last year, given the pandemic and stuff,
Right.
is like the ability to ask questions, right? And to challenge your superiors a little bit in terms of your comfort level or in terms of what the actual expectations are for you is something that is a skill, right? It's a skill that needs practice. And it's something that I hope that our students can gain that confidence so that they're never kind of left in that situation. And yeah, it's just, it's a tough story.
Yeah, it could be difficult for a junior engineer, right, to kind of speak up to your boss. But I mean, the ramification can be huge. Hopefully, not as huge as something like this, right? But yeah, it's better to be upfront and be just talk to your supervisor or whatnot, rather than coming to a point where you get this Mount Poly mining issue, right? So it's yeah.
And I guess last kind of oratorious PSA for our students is things like when you have courses that touch on ethics and professionalism, on the professional practice and stuff. Sometimes the attitude can be a little eye rolly. It's like, yeah, okay, it's obvious, don't be bad, but sometimes it's not, right? When you get pressure from somebody and your job is on the line, or you need to show, like, what if your supervisor says like, well, if you can't do this, then what are you good for? Why am I even paying you? You get that like kind of lean on you, especially when you need that experience. You're trying to get your own license, so you need them to sign off on your experience record. There can be a lot of like weird, touchy things in play, and really some of those opportunities to get exposed to that information before graduating or before going into long-term internships or EIT positions is pretty helpful, more often than not, right? Even if it doesn't seem like technical engineering content at the time, it doesn't mean it's not important. So anyway, so there you go. Let's just move on. Vince, you found something pretty cool that blows my mind. So let's talk about that.
So I mean, we're gonna pump Google's tires again. We talked about Google last time, but we'll talk about. I mean, they have their hands in so many things right now. It literally blows my mind. Like, I mean, they start with like a search engine, right? And like a search engine back then, you had like Yahoo, you had like Ask the Levi or whatever, like
Ask Jeeves, Ask
Jeeves, and then like just
Alta Vista. Yeah,
right?
you remember Alta Vista?
Yeah, just like and then Google takes over, and then now they're in like literally everything.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I was gonna say you are allowed to be in everything if you have all the money in the world. So just saying.
So I mean, I guess they're into science as well, and quantum computing has been a thing for the past probably a couple of decades, or at least in earnest a decade. In the past decade, there has been a lot of development there. I'm not an expert, just a disclaimer, in quantum computing, but what the Google people did was through their quantum processor, they created this new phase of matter, something that was postulated back in 2012 by a Nobel Prize winner, that there is this thing called a time crystal. And you might be like, hey, like, what is a time crystal? Well, like a normal crystal is something that has a repeated pattern in a physical space, right? And they say that it'll break, a crystal breaks, a physical translational symmetry, where a time crystal has a repeating pattern through time, even though it's in its base lowest energy state. So what that really means is that it doesn't just stay as one static crystal. It moves back and forth in between states throughout time, even though there's no energy input. And so literally this could be claimed as a perpetual motion machine, although we right now don't have any ways of extracting that energy from the time crystals. But they said they have created it. They actually published a paper, a preprint, so it's not peer reviewed yet, but they have published a preprint of their paper about how they generated this time crystal in eigenstate order on a quantum processor. That's the name of the paper. So pretty cool stuff that Google is doing. And like, I don't know. Jake, what's your thought on quantum computing before we talk about time crystal? Do you know much about quantum computing?
Yeah, like I mean, fun fact, I guess, just to quickly go on that. So you say like perpetual motion machine. So just to make it like really clear, this time crystal, the reason it's so well, first of all, it has a cool name and it's involved with quantum physics, and everybody thinks that's wicked. And like you, I'm no expert in this stuff, but um, the violation of the second law of thermodynamics, right, where the entropy of the universe always increases. In other words, there is always an irreversible loss to any kind of motion or any kind of energy expense, right? Like there's that irreversible loss, and this is why perpetual motion machines are impossible. Yet here we have this new state of matter that it doesn't really move as much as just exists, right, between two different positions or two different states of being. So you've got its ground state as not being static, its ground state is transient in a way. And so in a manner of speaking, it is moving without changing the entropy of the universe. In other words, it is a perfectly reversible process. So anybody that knows like irreversible process, that's basically everything ever. But this is a reversible process, hence the perpetual motion machine, hence the potential to solve the world's energy crisis, right, by violating the second law of thermodynamics somehow to create motion and therefore hopefully useful energy for nothing, right? Like this is the alchemical dream of any scientist. So anyway, quantum computing is cool. Fun fact, I was actually working on a textbook on quantum computing with a university in Denmark, Denmark Technical Institute, DTI. And I was working with them for a few months. I ended up, when the school year started, taking a hiatus from that, but it required me to look into a lot of, basics in terms of quantum physics and stuff. And the purpose of the textbook was on trying to expand the use of quantum computing to solve chemical engineering problems. So things like, not just like the protein folding problem, for example, but you also have things like crystal structure predictions, or in my wheelhouse, which was optimization. So optimization developed not on a sequential computing or binary computing device, even in a parallelized state, but optimization actually taking advantage of quantum bits, or in other words, right, states of existence that are both 0 and 1 at the same time. So quantum computing, it's definitely in its early stages. Like they can't really do anything with it right now. I can't remember what IBM has a quantum computer that's like, I think, how many qubits is it?
I think it's like 55. 56.
I was going to say 50, 56.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm not crazy. But like, of course, you can't do anything terribly useful with that. But at the same time, you don't have to go that much higher to create something useful than that, because a quantum bit is so much more useful. And you can look it up on your own time if you're listening. Like what the math involved is the number of states that you can represent with regular bits like zeros and ones versus states that you can represent with quantum bits. You don't need to go that much higher to just completely overtake the world's biggest supercomputer pretty quickly. Now, the thing that I was working on was not the invention of those computers, because I'm not an engineer with any kind of knowledge on how that would work. But what we need to do is rethink how problems are formulated, right? We need to rethink how the math works by using quantum theory and by actually, applying some of that in more practical applications, right? So things like chemical engineering problems, like plant simulations and optimization using that, which is pretty hard, right? You're asking somebody to rethink the way that they think about math. But at the end of the day, if it's possible, then quantum computing could be a huge step forward, right? Like a huge step forward.
Yeah. And they're still trying to achieve quantum supremacy, right? And that simply means like, doing a calculation that traditional computer can't do, or can't do in a reasonable amount.
Yeah, like what takes a lifetime would take no time. Yeah.
Right. And there has been a couple of publications or a couple of news articles that have said that they have achieved it, but people have challenged it. But I think we're close. And the scary thing, I think, you're right. The application is immense, even in chemical engineering. But I think the scary thing is if quantum computing becomes a thing, or become accessible, then all our encryption goes to gone.
We're
done.
Yeah.
Right? Like, like like cryptocurrency, like that's that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so
self-driving cars. You can just hack into any self-driving car in like 2 seconds, and you're off to the races, literally and figuratively. So watch out there. But yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to mention something else about the quantum computers that I think is interesting, is that it also, in a manner of speaking, doesn't really violate the second law of thermodynamics. But one thing that a computer processor, especially a computer processor composed of transistors and semiconductors, is that it consumes energy and then kicks it off in the form of heat, right? And if you ever look at any of these quantum computers that they have, first of all, they're like ridiculously huge. But then you got to remember, like back in the 1950s, like if you wanted to play Pong, back in the 60s and 70s when you were a kid, then you had to like book a room that had like a server looking thing the size of a wall. And that was the computer that you used to play Pong. So like, let's just imagine how far we've come from there. And then think about in our lifetime where we'll go with the quantum computing thing. But the thing that makes it look so big, right, is that it's got like 4 layers of freezers, because the inner core operates at basically absolute zero, right? Like, or as close to absolute zero as they can get. And that's not because it generates heat. Now, that's the thing that's so amazing to me. It doesn't generate heat at all, because there's no like kind of, or maybe it generates a little bit, but there's no losses involved there. Right. It's just that it operates so much more efficiently in terms of the calculation, and you get so much less noise, like perturbation noise, when it's so cold that they have to run these computers at minus 273 Celsius, and it's like out of control. So
yeah, that's true. And also, I didn't know you had a textbook on quantum.
I don't. I mean, I was chipping in. I wrote a few proposals for it, and hopefully that the guys, a really nice group in DTI. I hope that they've made some progress in a little bit, but I just wasn't able to sustain it last fall. Last fall was kind of hard. I don't know if you were aware. There was a pandemic. I guess you probably forgot. It was some weird thing, but
Jake Neese, man of many talents,
yeah, not really. It's funny, right? Because I'm like, hey, I don't know anything about quantum physics, and they're like, that's okay, neither do we. We're going to learn it first, and then we're going to do it. I'm like, you know what? If anything, that's a great motivation to learn quantum physics. Yeah. So, fun fact, I actually so it's in my office. I would show it to you. We're on a video call right now, but I would show it to you. In my office, there is a book, Introduction to Quantum Mechanics, and I can't remember the author, but it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It had a lot of like hand derived math in it, which was a little bit messy, but it gave a decent explanation of a lot of the basic principles of quantum mechanics. But the funny thing is that on the front cover of the book is a cat. Okay, so like your classic Heisenberg's cat, right? Schrodinger's cat. I'm an idiot. Yeah, Heisenberg's uncertainty, Schrodinger's cat. Thank you. So on the front cover is a cat, right? And guess what's on the back cover?
A box.
No, you can do better than that.
Another cat.
Another cat that is
dead.
It's dead. So it's like the most like brutal textbook artwork I've ever seen. There's just like an illustration of a cat on the front, and then on the back, the cat is dead, right? And that's the classic Schrodinger's cat that is used as an example, usually out of context, right? But it's an example of entanglement theory, which is kind of fun. But anyway, Schrodinger's cat is both alive and dead on my textbook at the same time. It's a little bit.
Speaking of cats, do you see if your cat's there?
Yeah, no, I got a cat now. It's super exciting. He's actually asleep in his carrier. He's the only, this cat's crazy. So this cat is just like a dog. He loves his belly getting scratched. Like, when was the last time you ever met a cat that if you start petting it, it like flips over and wants you to scratch his belly?
He doesn't hiss at you?
No, he's just like, he's so chill, and he like has this really funny meow, and he's always like, doing this weird stuff. He's just always like a dog. Right now, he is behind me. You can't see because it's on the floor, but his cat like cage, like the carrier cage or whatever, he just sleeps in it. Like, when have you ever met a cat that likes going in its carrier? It's like the most traumatic experience for them, but like, it's just open in my office behind me with the door open. And like 3 hours ago when I was working, he just like marched on in there and just fell asleep, and he's been in there ever since. And he's just chilling. He's hilarious. He's great.
So for our loyal listeners, what's your cat's name? I'm sure they would want to know.
The cat's name is Leo. We adopted the cat from another family, so it
Nice.
came with a name. I call him Leonardo DiCaprio. That's my name for him. So
That's awesome.
he's hilarious though. Thank you for asking. And
Yeah, what a segue from quantum mechanics to your cat.
yeah,
at home.
that's the kind of thing that you can only get with hours and hours of preparation and not going off the cuff at all. So
Yeah.
Okay, last topic before we get to our interview with Genna, right?
Yeah,
So we have a
that's
great
right.
interview coming up with Genevieve Conant about industry. So somebody that's been in industry for a little bit longer than Noel was, and then obviously Dr. Adams is more on the academic side, but Genevieve has had multiple positions at different companies, right? So we're excited to talk to her a little bit about what it's like to change roles, what some practical advice is if things aren't working out or are working out, you have different opportunities. How do you manage those relationships? So she's going to give us a little bit of a heads up on that.
Yeah, but before that, let's talk about the Jays.
Right? Yeah, we did want to talk about the Blue Jays, didn't we?
The
Blue Jays.
And I mean, they're red hot right now, right? So let me just kind of pull up how many games back are they on the wild card spot? Do you know?
So going into last night, I think it was 2.5. So for those
fantastic.
of us listening, the current date is Thursday, August 12th is when we are talking right now. So they beat the Angels 10-2 last night on the back of a grand slam by my fantasy boy, Teoscar Hernandez. Thank you very much. But yeah, I think they were 2.5 back going in. It's a weird situation. So they're playing some great baseball. I am going to go to a game on August 24th. So I'm very excited,
nice.
Provided that we don't enter the fourth wave so hard that they shut the economy down again by August 24th, which might happen and would really upset me for more reasons than just missing the baseball game, obviously. But I am going to go see a game, and I'm very excited. They're playing the White Sox, so that should be pretty good. But yeah, they're playing well, and they're in this weird spot, right, where typically if you're 2.5 games out of a wild card spot, you could justify making some aggressive moves. And they did make some good moves, particularly Jose Barrios is a great ad. And especially with Ross Stripling, the stockbroker, who
is just tearing it out right now.
Yeah,
right?
but he got hurt though on Tuesday. He strained his oblique. And if we know anything about baseball, especially for hitting, I don't know much about pitching, but oblique strains are bad news. Like they take a long time. So anyway, good thing that they got the extra pitcher. And yeah, like usually you're 2.5 out and you're like, okay, we can make a hard push, just like the Jays did in 2015, right? Like 2015 is the modern era of like craziness. And then 2015, 2016 with like the bat flip, everybody remembers the bat flip. And but here's the problem though, right? Like they're 2.5 games back, but there's like 6 teams all within 2.5 games.
Crazy. This wild card race has been insane. But I mean, you're going to a good game, right? The Sox are what 2.5 games above us. They are in the wild card spot, right?
The White Sox?
No, the White Sox is where are they? The White Sox is.
I don't think the White Sox. Well, first of all,
they're 67 and 48. So I mean,
okay, yeah, so they're up there too. So anyway,
right?
Yes, the Red Sox I think are a little bit ahead of us, right? Because they tumbled out of first place, I think, in the AL East recently.
Yeah, I mean, were in I don't understand Tampa, but like Tampa just does it every year, right? Like
it's because Kevin Cash is an evil scientist, and the Tampa Bay management system has this like incredible setup where they just like only pay players until they become worthy of being paid, and then they just ship them all off to get more play. Like somehow they just keep nailing the farm system every time.
It's like Moneyball, but like,
yeah, they got Brad Pitt in there behind the scenes and Jonah Hill. They're crunching the numbers.
That's a good movie though. Like
it is a good movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
And I don't know. Okay, like obviously I'm not super familiar with the true story of like Billy Bean baseball and all that kind of thing. And I don't know how many liberties were taken in the film because like, usually those films, if it was a true story, it's like not like really that true. It's like kind of self-serving in a lot of ways. But if that story is close to being true in terms of like just the change of attitude and like how, Billy Bean's attitude around the whole thing was, it's pretty impressive. and also just exposes you to the struggles of a baseball team in a small market when you don't have the budget like the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Dodgers or even the Blue Jays for that matter.
Yeah.
And you've got like a kind of the minimum payroll. It's weird, right? And it's hard to come up with a contender when you can't attract free agents. And that's what Tampa's like, right? They can't attract, or they choose not to attract the big name.
Well, their field is also awful.
Well, yeah. There was a rumor about the Rays splitting time between Montreal and Tampa Bay, right? In the upcoming years, kind of like to bring back the Expos sort of, but I don't know where they would play in Montreal. I guess Olympic Stadium, but like apparently that's like brutal.
That's worse than the Trop. So like
the Trop is bad. But anyway, yeah, Blue Jays looking good.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, Jose Barrios, and then Alek Manoah has been a revelation. Man,
I grabbed Alek Manoah on the waiver wire in fantasy.
I'm surprised he's still available.
Fantasy. Well, no, I grabbed him months ago, like before he made his first start, like right before he was about to make his first start. I was like, okay, I'll take a risk on this.
Like Robbie Ray is doing well, right?
Yeah.
And then Jordan Romano is turning out to be
the
pretty solid save. Yeah, like safe machine now. Or
Laura loves Robbie Ray because he let's just say that she thinks he fills out those pants with that butt like perfectly, He's always like, oh, that's the guy that wears the pants that are too tight. I'm like, yeah, that's right. But he's absolutely just ripping it out there. It's great. He's got great hair too. I love that like faux hawk look. He rocks all the time as well.
And then our lineup has been as advertised, right? Like I mean, George Springer had like a slow start, but now it's just like tearing it up. So
well, I mean, the man has 15 home runs in like 30 games.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like maybe a little bit more than 30. I don't want to give him more credit and credit's due, but even if it's like 40 games, that's a 60 home run a season pace, right? Like that's a monumental pace. And Vladdy's hit the schneid a little bit recently. So he's not hitting quite as well as he was. He's still on the season up over 300, but I think if you looked at him over the last month, he's probably hitting around 220, 230. It's been a bit of a tough go, but the rest of the offense, like he carried the team.
Until George Springer came, right? So
and then now basically Vladdy and Simeon, and then Bo took a while to heat up, but Bichette's been better. Teoscar was out with COVID-19 for a while, right? Now he's kind of like back to hitting. He's hitting over 300 this year, which is really great. So we got the situation where even though Vladdy is going through a little bit of a rough patch, and he'll get out of it because he's Vladdy, but the rest of the team is really like stepping up, right?
Yeah. And I like Corey Dickerson coming back, a lefty, right?
Well, I was shocked because I saw a game the other day where they had Corey Dickerson and Braybeck Valera and Reese McGuire all batting, and I was like, "What's 3 left-handed batters? Wait a minute, what's going on?" And as a lefty myself in baseball, it just really makes me happy. It's the only reason that Phil Mickelson is my favorite golfer, because he was like the only lefty around when I was a kid. Him and Mike Weir represent. But
and at least Reese McGuire is actually producing something from behind the plate now. So
and I'm a huge fan of Captain Kirk. So I'm an Alejandro Kirk fan. I think he's hilarious. So I actually thought that they had traded him. Well, I was listening to a thing on trade deadline day. I was in the car coming home from something, and I just kind of turned it on in the middle of when they were talking about a trade that they made. I think they were talking about Austin Martin at the time, but given the context, I think I thought that they were talking about Alejandro Kirk, and I think that it's because they were talking about how Danny Jansen got hurt again. So I was a little bit confused, but anyway, no, it was Riley Adams. They traded Riley Adams. He was the catcher, right? So they traded him, and I thought that they were trading. I was so sad, and then I saw him in a game, and I was elated. So there you go. All right. So nice to chat with you, Vince. We have an interview coming up, so let's go and do that. And then we will come back with our episodic tier list.
Yeah.
It's going to be good, man. It's going to be a good time. All right, let's take a quick break and come back in a minute. All right, and we are now very thrilled to be joined by Genevieve Conant, who is here to answer a few questions and tell us about her experience at McMaster and then beyond. How you doing tonight, Jenna?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Uh, you are doing us a big favor, and we appreciate it a lot. So, jumping right in, hoping that you could give us an introduction, tell our listeners about your time at Mac and your career since.
Absolutely. So, hello, podcast world. I'm Genna. For any of you current students who probably don't know me personally, because I graduated in 2014 from the Department of Chemical Engineering, and I was actually a part of the Chemical Engineering and Bioengineering program. So that's what I graduated from. Following undergrad, I completed my master's at the University of Toronto under the supervision of Dr. Milica Radizic. So her field is tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, and that kind of space. So my project was looking at cardiovascular tissue engineering and could we use these engineered heart constructs as a preclinical drug screening model. So I was very interested in this kind of world of using the stem cells and using tissues to regrow organ systems, and can we heal the body with kind of with cells as opposed to just small molecules. In my master's, though, I realized I didn't want to continue on to a PhD. It wasn't really the area I wanted to go into. I didn't really want to go into academia, and so that led me to take a position at a startup out of the University of Toronto called Amica Thera. So they're a startup out of the lab of Dr. Molly Scheuket, and they were looking at, or I should say they are looking at injectable sustained drug delivery systems. So the idea would be if you were to have surgery, let's say a knee replacement or a hip replacement, you could inject the hydrogel with the drug into that area, and you would have the pain treatment or the pain killing medication delivered right to the system or right to the area, so you don't have to worry about taking pain killing pills or IV drips or anything like that. So I was really interested in getting into industry because I thought this is really cool. We can have all this amazing technology that's coming out of the lab, but it's not actually getting into the patients. It's just kind of getting written up in a thesis and getting put on a shelf, or getting written into a journal article and getting put on the shelf. So my time at Amica Thera was a really cool transition out of grad school and into industry. And after about 10 months there, I was looking for a more stable position, a more permanent position. And that led me to getting a job at Covalon Technologies. So they are a medical device company based out of Mississauga. They create technologies and they market technologies in the field of advanced wound care, infection prevention, and medical device coatings. So I was employed as a scientist. Well, I started as an associate scientist and then I got promoted to scientist. And in that role, I was in the lab developing these technologies. So I got to do a little bit of internal development where we'd make products that we sell ourselves, as well as working with our kind of other side of the business where we would work with other clients who had technologies and they would be looking to mirror it and combine it with ours, our own platform technologies, I should say. So yeah, so that was really, really interesting. But deep down, I always knew that I wanted to get back into that space of cell and gene therapy and tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. I didn't think any companies like that existed yet. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was still kind of science fiction until I started noticing that there was this company called Blue Rock Therapeutics that had been kind of over the last few years have been gaining more traction and then been raising funding for their kind of first round of products. And so about 2 months ago, I actually started a position at Blue Rock as a clinical formulation development, so in the Department of Clinical Formulation Development. So I'm part of the team that helps develop the system that will be used to deliver these cell products into patients. So that's what I currently do right now.
That's really awesome. Just the wealth of experience you have from grad school to a startup company to now like a tissue engineering therapeutic company. So with all the experience that you have, can you tell us a little bit about your experience at Mac first, and then what are some of the critical skills that you kind of picked up along the way that you use in your career right now?
Absolutely, yeah. So I am so grateful for my experience at McMaster. I can definitely say that I would not be in the position I am today, or really the person I am today, if it weren't for my time there, both from the academic side and the extracurricular side. So academically, I am definitely the scientist I am today because of the technical skills that I gained being an engineer, just the actual, the technical courses, whether it's fluid mechanics, heat and mass transfer, energy transfer, those kinds of thermodynamics, those kinds of things, but also just the approach to teaching problem solving and critical thinking and thinking outside the box. Those skills that I gained is literally what I do every day. All I do is solve problems. I get approached with a problem and I have to think of a creative way to address that, whether it's, taking things that have already been created and can we adapt it to our system, thinking completely out of the box and applying something that has never been done here and seeing if we can tweak it for what we want to do. So I mean, I use the skills that I gained at Mac, and just kind of their approach to solving problems every single day. On the other side of things, I was heavily involved in, like I mentioned, extracurriculars. So I was, a tour guide for the engineering outreach office and involved in their kind of outreach events. I was a member of the McMaster Engineering musical for my years there and ended up actually directing the show in my final year. And those experiences really helped hone my soft skills. So my interpersonal communication, my teamwork and leadership skills. And the more I spend time in industry, the more I realize that those skills are invaluable. And just the ability to communicate between different departments, not just your peers, but also maybe people who don't share a common background as you, being able to work as a team, because from my experience, every place I've worked with has never been an independent sport. Everything's been a team sport. We work together, we succeed as a team, we fail as a team. So understanding those team dynamics is really important. And also just gaining the ability, working in kind of these different extracurriculars, you're put in situations where maybe you don't know everyone, and networking is an element of it, but it's also just being comfortable in crowds and being comfortable with presenting yourself and selling yourself is definitely helpful just in industry in general. So yes, I'm very grateful for my time at McMaster, and I learned a lot doing it, to say the least.
That's great. Thanks so much. And it's nice to hear somebody reflect on the fact that you appreciate the process of learning and the process of applying yourself as much as, if not more than, the hard-nosed facts, which of course you don't necessarily use those on a day-to-day basis, depending on the field that you're in, but the process of learning and the process of going through that and being able to come up with creative solutions is something that endures kind of no matter what you do, right? So
absolutely.
That's
it's not necessarily about knowing the answer, it's about knowing how to find the answer.
Perfect.
And I think that's the key.
Well said. And so now what I'm going to do is take that question, kind of turn it around on you a little bit. So, you had nothing but good things to say about Mac, but did you do anything that maybe you wish you would have done differently? Do you think that maybe you participated in things that looking back, you're like, maybe I shouldn't have, or do you have anything that maybe our students can learn from if any mistakes were made?
Oh, definitely. I don't like to say I regret anything, but if I had been given the opportunity again, there are definitely different opportunities I would have taken. So when I was an undergrad, I will not lie, I was scared of the real world. I was terrified of life outside of university. So I knew I wanted to do grad school because I was interested in this kind of biomaterials, tissue engineering, biomedical engineering kind of field. And I noticed that a lot of those career options, you needed a PhD or a master's or some sort of graduate school. So I said, okay, all I'm going to do in my summers of undergrad is work in the lab. So I got a position working as a research associate in the labs out of McMaster. Not to say I regret my time doing that at all, because I met wonderful people and learned amazing things. But in hindsight, I think it would have been advantageous if I'd also taken the opportunity to try some industry placements and try some co-ops, whether I had done, the full 12-month co-op or just some summers, maybe working at a company or something like that. That's something that I think I would have benefited from, because it would have given me that exposure to what industry is really like sooner, because I was convinced I wanted to go into grad school because I was really scared about the real world. And I thought, no, I'm just going to postpone it for a little bit longer and just stay in grad school. So in hindsight, I think that would have been something that I should have stepped outside of my comfort zone and just put myself out there and tried it, and not be scared of making a mistake, because I think that was my problem. I was scared about going somewhere and hating it. But you can learn a lot from those experiences, and knowing that even if it's a 4-month co-op, it's not the end of the world. You might love it, you might hate it, but you learn a lot from the experience. So that's something that anyone who's thinking about grad school and who's focused on grad school, maybe take some time and try something else. You never know what you're going to like. I think that's the big thing.
That's funny because that's exactly why I went to grad school as well. And I guess I'm still at school, so I never went into the real world. So, and Jake is probably the same thing. So, I mean, you have been in the workplace for a few years now. So, just reflecting on your experience in the workplace, what are some experiences that aligned with your expectation coming out of school? And what are some things that were kind of like, oh, you didn't expect?
So one thing I did think that was kind of more important was having the answers all the time. And I think I mentioned this earlier, is I think that was part of the reason I was scared of going into the real world, was that I was expected to know all these things and just to always know what the answer is and know how to move forward. And what I realize now is no one knows what they're doing ever. Like, as silly as that sounds, that everyone is, there's some people who can make decisions super quick on the fly like that. But most of us, we get presented with the situation and we say, okay, let me think, let me, look at what I've done in the past, look at what resources I have and make a decision off that. So that's definitely been different. So whether that was my own anxieties in undergrad talking then, but also understanding that in industry, at least in the industries I've been in, maybe it's because I've been in research and development, that it really is a team. And I've been very fortunate to work at institutions where they encourage that teamwork. So even if I have a problem, I'm not solving it on my own. I can approach my colleagues, I can approach my supervisor and come up with these problems, and they're there to help. It's not just like I'm in a corner and they say, haha, figure it out, you're on your own, sink or swim, go. So that's been nice, because I didn't think that in industry you'd have that support network. And I've been fortunate that at these places where I've been, you really have had that support network. So that's been really, really nice and really encouraging. And so something that I was scared of didn't really come true. The other thing I didn't think, and I think I mentioned this earlier as well, was I honestly didn't think that these types of careers or these types of jobs in this kind of field of cell therapy and gene therapy existed yet. And so that's one thing that in undergrad, I didn't really fully understand what types of jobs were out there in the field of biomedical engineering and this like chem-eng, bio-eng, like materials kind of space. I just honestly didn't know what was out there. I thought it's like I could go work in oil and gas as a process engineer. I could go work at Dow and do chemistry stuff. I just didn't have a good understanding of the types of jobs that I could do. And it's not even just research based. It's you could do process control at a pharmaceutical company. You can do medical science liaison if you like that kind of biology side and the technical side and working with people. So there's so many different things out there, and I was just so focused on what I didn't know or what I thought I knew that I didn't take the time to look and see what was actually out there. So yeah, there's a lot of jobs out there.
Yeah, I think we really need to get you talking to some first years with your job suggestions that aren't oil and gas, because that aligns right. perfectly with the messaging that we're trying to convey. And honestly, not doing a terrific job. We're trying. We're looking for strategies, and I can confirm what Genna said when she said that nobody knows what they're doing, because that is also true of me. So, and Vince is pointing at himself too. So we have no clue. But that's all right. So, all right, last question. That's like kind of what I would say a professional style question. So as you mentioned, you changed jobs a few months back to Blue Rock Therapeutics, right? And you pursued this opportunity because A, you didn't even know that this field really existed and it was there. And then B, it was something that you were passionate about, having had that experience in the startup and with Covalon prior to, that was a little more aligned with what you were interested in. So my question here for our students that are a little concerned about things like, loyalty to your job or like, what do I do? How do I handle the workplace dynamic? Do you have any perspective or advice on changing companies kind of mid-career? So do you specifically have things for our students if they maybe are graduating or maybe they're looking for co-ops, something that they can put in their back pocket for when they get to the workplace that they'll feel good about?
Yeah, it's a really awkward experience, that's for sure. And it's even more awkward if you like the person you work for. That makes it super awkward. And I mean, there's so many reasons why someone might want to change the position that they're currently in. It could be that maybe the organization they're at doesn't offer the the growth they're hoping to get. It could be that maybe they just don't like the organization they're working for, and there might be some clashing going on for whatever reason. And it could just be that, you know, you're not as interested in the position as you thought you'd be, and you've been in there for a few years and you just want to change because you want to do something different. It's okay to feel awkward. Like it will be awkward. It's uncomfortable because I'm one of those people that feel guilty about letting people down. So it's like, I don't want to let you down. I'm sorry, I'm leaving. I don't hate you, but it's just because, you know, this is a really awesome opportunity for me. So you need to advocate for yourself. They should make you feel guilty for leaving. However, that being said, there is a good and a bad way to handle it. I would definitely not recommend just saying, I'm leaving tomorrow, goodbye. Here's my not retirement, resignation letter. Here's my resignation letter, see ya. Don't do that, especially if you want to maintain those relationships further down. So at my previous company, I had a really good relationship with my supervisor, and I consider him a good friend. So when I left, I really didn't want to burn that bridge, because he's a wonderful person, and I really enjoyed working with him, as well as the rest of my team. So it's, you know, when you're in that awkward situation, approach them and have that conversation with them to let them know, you know, this isn't a comment on you, or this isn't a comment on the work, or whatever the reason is that you're leaving. Be open and honest with them. And I personally chose, I know they always say you have to give 2 weeks notice. I personally chose to give longer, because I wanted to make sure that I could make that transition period as smooth as possible from when I was leaving and the work that I was doing transition to other people. So yeah, it will be awkward. That's okay. Depending on how you want to leave your relationship with the company, you can either choose the whole, hi, I'm gone, see you never, or you can communicate with your team, or with your supervisor or manager, whoever it is, and work through it. At the end of the day, if they care about you, they should be happy for you. And if they are not, then maybe that says more about them. I don't know. That was my personal opinion. It will be uncomfortable. It will suck. Your heart will be palpitating. I cried, I will be honest. So, and that's okay. Yeah, it's not fun, but sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah, Vince and I have never had a real job, so we don't have a job to lose. So we are still not in the real world, but thank you so much. That's great.
Oh, absolutely, anytime.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we don't have real jobs, so but that's great advice to our students, and we can't really give any advice to our students, so that's why we have interviewees like you, Genna. So now we're done with our quote unquote professional questions. Now we're moving to more lighthearted questions. So let me ask you, what do you do for fun? Like, what do you do outside of work?
Ooh, I love it when people ask me this, because I consider myself a very eclectic person. Usually when I tell people what my interests are, they say, really? So I mentioned that I was part of the engineering musical at Mac, and musical theater is definitely one of my passions. I grew up with theater. I love singing. I love dancing. Put me on the stage, I will ham it up on stage. Put me in the audience. I just want to watch. I love it. It's a huge part of my life. And I get a lot of, but you're in science. Science people do musical theater, and yes, we do, and it's fun. So so that's a big part of my life. I still am involved in community theater throughout the GTA. Obviously not right now, because COVID is still iffy, and these things haven't started up again, but it's something I'm really passionate about. I also love the outdoors, so I'm a big camper. I love hiking. My dog and I and my husband, we'll go on a lot of hikes, and we'll go camping together and go canoeing. I love being out on the water. I also love rock climbing, so I'm really happy that the gyms are open now, because I can get back to the gym, although I realized after not climbing for a year, I have no muscles. But that's okay. And I also love to crochet. So, I'm hanging upside down from a rock, knitting you or crocheting you a sweater or something. But that's me. I'm a big dork too. Give me video games, give me comic books and that kind of stuff. But I like a little bit of everything. But that's me in a nutshell. So if any of those things interest you, hit me up. I'd love to chat.
Yeah, that is wide and varied.
Right?
Interest. Eclectic is a fantastic word.
Right.
And so, yeah. So the second lighthearted question is, can you tell us a funny story when you were at Mac?
I have a lot. Some of them are not probably appropriate for this podcast, but I did come up with one that I think is a perfect example of the resilience and resourcefulness of engineers. It was not a funny story at the time, but in hindsight, I think it is a funny story. So most of my stories come back to the musical because that's where I spent most of my time when I was not studying. But in my final year, I directed the engineering musical. And for those of you who aren't involved in the show, how we used to do it, at least back then, was we would hold the show at a high school downtown called Sir John A. Macdonald. And we would always run the show during March break. So that way we could get access to the auditorium and not have to worry about it interfering with school. So we're in the theater, it's show week. We've been in there a few days. It's Tuesday night. We're working through some glitches and some tech issues, getting ready for our dress rehearsal tomorrow. And the theater manager comes up to me and says, I just want to let you know it's going to snow tomorrow. And I thought, okay, that's great. Whatever, it's Ontario, it snows. And he says, no, it's going to snow a lot. And I thought, okay, well, I have snow tires, so that's not a big deal. And he said, well, they might call a snow day. And I learned that day that even when school's not in session, the school board can still call a snow day. So I thought, wait, what? He's like, oh yeah, if they call a snow day, you can't get into the theater. I'm not allowed to let you in. I'm sorry, that's just how it goes. And I thought, you're bluffing. Like, no way, it's not going to be a snow day. They're not going to close down the theater. We'll be able to hold our dress rehearsal. It'll be fine. Well, lo and behold, Wednesday morning arrives and I wake up, check my computer, and Hamilton Wentworth District School Board has called a snow day. So after shouting an expletive very loudly and about 10 minutes of crying in the fetal position, I muster up the courage to say, all right, team, what are we going to do? How are we going to hold a dress rehearsal? Because we open tomorrow and we need to do something. Theater people are very superstitious and no one wants to not have a dress rehearsal the night before the show, but we have no costume. The band doesn't have their instruments. Crew doesn't have their crew stuff, like their props and stuff like that. What are we going to do? So one of the members of the team was part of, I forget what the group's called, Avtech. They're the ones who do the stages and stuff for things on the campus. And he said, I have an idea. And he pulls out this giant curtain and we go to the third floor of the student center and hold a makeshift like show just in our pajamas on the third floor of the student center for anyone who happened to be walking by. And that's where we had our dress rehearsal the night before we opened for the 2014 McMaster Engineering musical. So if you happen to be taking a nap in the student center that night, I'm sorry. We were singing and dancing kind of loudly, but it just shows you that, you know, it was a crazy situation. No one could foresee it, but the whole team came together and I was so proud of how everyone handled it and everyone's ideas. And yeah, it was, well, at the time I was not in a good place. Looking back on it, I said, wow, that was funny. And we pulled through and it was an amazing show.
And I mean, how often is it that like some of the most trying times of your life, right? Some of the most crazy things where you're just like, well, you know, shit's hitting the fan, here we go. And you just got to deal. And then you look back on that and it's just hilarious, right? Like
exactly.
I've got so many funny stories from high school, even just like my car breaking down in the dead of winter, like my throttle cable snapping. And it's just like, at the time you're just like spazzing out, but it's just hilarious, you know?
Yeah. And it's definitely one of those times where you're all in it together. Like everyone's dealing with this too. So it's like, all right, I guess this is typical engineering. We're all in, you know, essentially a shit situation, but we pull through it as a team. We come through it together. That's how it works.
Hey, and you know what? That's awesome. And I'm glad that you had that experience. And at the end of the day, I'm sure the show was terrific. I usually go to musical. I don't remember going in 2014 though. What was the musical?
It was Snow White in the 7-to-1 ratio based off of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I was very proud of the name. I thought it was very clever. Yep.
All right. Yep. Okay, last question. So I don't know if you're aware, if you've been listening to the podcast, I don't think you have because this is still fairly early for us, but each week or each episode, I should say, we're doing a little tier list. It's something that Vince and I can argue about and banter and basically gives me an opportunity to dump on things like the board game Clue and feel good about it on air. So this week, We are doing a tier list on television sitcoms. We've heard that you are into, you take your TV very seriously, I believe,
Yes.
is what we were told.
Mhm.
So I was hoping you could give us a ranking on a couple of pretty popular shows or common shows, kind of some older ones and some newer ones. We've got 3 here for you. Just so that you're aware, we're using a scale A, B, C, D, F. So you're kind of your typical academic scale, A being the best and F being the worst, except there's a special class S, which is even better than A. So you get to
Right.
like put one in like the gold medal of the Olympics podium if you so choose. Okay.
Right.
So we'll do it kind of rapid fire. I've got 3 for you. Maybe just give us what you think it is, and then maybe a quick explanation. All right. We're going to start with an absolute classic that many people have seen, and it's extremely popular. It's going to be Friends.
Oh, Friends. So I will be honest, I have lost track of how many times I've seen Friends. If you were to ask me about probably 10, 15 years ago, I would have said Friends is probably my favorite TV show. Now, it has been replaced by other shows, but it'll always have a very soft spot in my heart. And I used to have the whole DVD box set before Netflix was a thing, and I probably worn down the DVDs because I've watched them so much. So I would definitely put Friends in the A to S spot because there's certain things about it that didn't age well, but I can still watch that show and get a real good chuckle out of it and have many discussions with people on who is the best friend, because that's a very hot topic item. Hot button item, I should say.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, I assume that would be up there.
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit more modern than Friends and go with one that can be a bit divisive depending on who you ask, but its popularity is pretty much undisputed at this point. Wondering how you would rate The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah. So it's funny you mention the divisiveness of The Big Bang Theory, because I am definitely on the side of Big Bang Theory. Because when it first started, I remember watching it and thinking, this is so great. It's nerds on TV. I'm a nerd. I'm on TV. I love this. They had made jokes about the Doppler effect and stuff like that. And I thought it was amazing. And then as the show went on, I noted, okay, so I'm going to get really, I'm not philosophical, but like really deep here, because I have had this discussion many times about the Big Bang Theory. As it went on, I felt like it was less about celebrating nerds and more about making fun of them. And that hurt. As a nerd, it hurt me. And I felt that it wasn't representing me anymore. So I loved the first, like maybe season, 2 seasons, something like that. And then I really did not like it. And I felt like it was like making fun of the people that they were supposed to have as their audience. So I don't know. I just got very frustrated with it. So Big Bang Theory, I would put at the bottom of that list just because they broke my heart. They had so much potential and they broke my heart. Yeah, so that's my feelings on The Big Bang Theory. I'm on the do not like side. I know why people like it, but it makes me sad.
What's the you got to give it a grade though? You giving it the F? Really?
I'd give it the D.
All right.
Because it's like there were some great moments and there were some great episodes, but just like I stopped watching probably the 3rd or 4th season, and I have no desire to go back and finish it.
The
Fair
betrayal
enough.
is real.
Yeah, it just broke my heart. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Don't you hate shows, and not like it's on the same level, but don't you hate shows that start out with such promise and then just tank?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I'm thinking of Lost. Man, I was so into Lost, and then like, oh man.
I know,
Anyway,
same. Like Lost, I did watch it all the way through, but I remember just being at the end and thinking, what?
Yeah, it was just like, oh, his name is Christian Shepherd. How did you not notice that the whole time? I'm like, I did though. Come on. Oh,
yeah.
That's the problem with Lost. It just like string you along, and then it was just like a complete letdown at the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I feel you. So.
All right. So last but certainly not least, we're going to go on a bit of a back in the day dive. All right. So a little earlier than Friends, maybe even a little too early for you, but as a TV aficionado, I'm hoping that you've seen it. This, I will go on record before you even answer it, I will say is one of my favorite shows of all time. I love it. We're asking for the Cheers spinoff, Frasier, starring Kelsey Grammer.
So I'll admit I haven't seen all of Frasier. I have seen enough to know I really like the show, but I've just never gotten around to watching it through. I've actually seen more Cheers than I have Frasier. Funny enough, but like I know Cheers, and I know, like, I remember watching the first seasons of Cheers and being like, isn't that Frasier? And then realizing, oh, it's just a spinoff. I get it. I understand. But yeah, so I really like Frasier. I mean, who doesn't love Kelsey Grammer and David Hyde Pierce? Like, I mean, the two of them together are just magic. So I would put it as an A, B, only because I haven't seen it all the way through, but I do really like it. And it's on my list of like, these are shows I need to watch eventually. Like Seinfeld's another one. Like I know Seinfeld's great. I know the episodes I've seen I loved, but I haven't actually seen it all the way through. So it's on that list of like classic comedies to watch. Yeah. I love the dog too in Frasier.
Yeah, no, Frasier, I couldn't agree more about Kelsey Grammer and David Hyde Pierce. Just a terrific duo for that gentrified like role.
Yep.
Is just like so funny, right?
Yep.
And I think that something that I love to do at parties or something, if things aren't going my way, is I love to be indignant, right? And I truly like to think that my behavior for that indignant behavior comes from watching Frasier when Kelsey Grammer gets like flustered or something,
right?
Like gets indignant, and it's just great. And there's even the one, so Kelsey Grammer was Sideshow Bob on The Simpsons. Yep. For those of us listening, that we don't even know who The Simpsons are, right? Which is not really the point of the story, but Sideshow Bob was like this like artistic theatrical Shakespearean goon that played a sideshow to Krusty the Clown, but it was like way below his calling, but he could never make it, and then he ends up going to jail and being like a criminal. But the point of the story, right, is that they had one episode where they brought in Sideshow Bob's brother Cecil, right? His name was Cecil Bob, and Cecil was voiced by David Hyde Pierce, right? And it was truly incredible, like just the fact that even worked out. So
great. Thank you so much, Genna, for just spending your time with us, answering our questions, giving insights to for our students, and just answering some of our fun questions as well. I'm sure our listeners really appreciate, and we definitely appreciate your time. So thanks so much, Genna.
Anytime. I'm happy to do it, and thank you so much for having me. And I hope people learn something. And like I said, if anything I said resonates with you, just don't hesitate to contact me. I'm always here for fellow marauders. Is that what we call ourselves? Marauders. That's what it is.
Yeah, marauders. Yeah.
I do believe we are the hashtag Fireball family now.
We are the hashtag Fireball family. Yes.
Yeah, we are the Fireball family. So yeah, just echoing Vince's comments. Thanks so much for your time, and we'll be happy to have you on the show again, and obviously keep you up to date on how things are going.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good night.
Take care. So welcome back to the Heat Exchanger podcast. I hope you enjoyed our interview with Genna. And as you have heard from the end of the interview, our episodic tier list this week, I guess, or this episode, is on sitcoms. And the judging criteria for the sitcom is how funny it is, how rewatchable it is, and how the characters are, how likable they are, and whether or not the acting is good. And I mean, we're going to be fairly loose on that one, but I mean, some sitcoms do not have great acting, but it is what it is. So we're going to start right off the bat with Frasier. So Jake, what's your thought on Frasier?
Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit with Genna, right? About the extension of Frasier. We even talked about, I think, a little bit in how like David Hyde Pierce made an appearance as the brother of Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons, because like that combination is just so great. So in terms of funny, I think Frasier is a little bit bipartisan. Some people find it hilarious. Some people do not find Frasier terribly funny because it's a little bit more dry. It's kind of like that sarcastic humor, the metropolitan guys that are like really high up and like living the good life or whatever. So some people don't relate to it. I don't think you need to relate to it for it to be funny. So I'm in the camp that finds it very funny. I love dry humor. I say jokes that nobody else laughs at all the time, in class and out of class. And in class, usually I'll remind everybody that was a funny joke. So for me, it's funny. It's rewatchable. Laura and I have started watching it again. I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I had a DVD set of season 6 or something like that when I went to university. So we watched that when we moved into our new house here last summer, or 2 summers ago, excuse me, when we didn't have any internet. So we just watched the DVDs of that. That was funny, but it's on Crave. So we started watching it. So I like it. I think the characters are classic. I think Fraser Crane is classic, and his brother Niles, David Hyde Pierce, is unbelievable. I even like Marty Crane, like the dad and the dog and dad, like everybody's good. So, and in terms of the acting, it's good, man. Like it's good. It's just such an ownership of a character, and it's great. So Frasier for me gets the A. I will always watch Frasier or just have it on in the background while stringing rackets or doing something. I think it's fantastic. So I love that show.
Great. I think for me, I mean, I haven't watched Frasier that much. I mean, I think it was a little bit before my time in terms like I wasn't even in the country at that time. So like I came to Canada when I was like 9, which is like 1995. So I mean, at that point, obviously I didn't even know English. So
yeah, it doesn't shock me that you don't find the characters in Frasier relatable.
Yeah, so
even a little bit.
So I mean, I watched some of the stuff on YouTube, like just kind of like snippets of it. I think it's okay. I could see how it could be funny. But it will be probably a C for me because I just don't really relate to it.
Yeah, that's fair. So tell me a little bit about so I think Genna really likes Friends, right? How do you feel about Friends?
So I mean, so Friends, it's weird, right? Because like they started before I came to Canada. But like I didn't watch Friends until probably when I was like in high school, right? Or probably like reruns, because
I feel like that's when you should watch Friends.
Yeah, it was on TV all the time. So by the time I learned English, by that time I have friends that watch Friends. So Friends was kind of the hip show, right? So I was into it, and in terms of rewatchability, actually, some like. When it was on Netflix, Sam and I, so my wife and I, we would, if we can't find anything else to watch, we'll watch Friends, and The Office. We'll talk about The Office later, but definitely rewatchable. The characters not super relatable, but like they are so like caricatures.
Yeah.
That like I found it like okay, Joey is the guy that eats a lot and is the dumb guy, and then like Monica is the anal person that's like like put a coaster on the table or like all that stuff, right? So like I'm good with it. I think it's a solid B for me. Like I think watching back now, there's some things that's like like it won't fly now, but it's like it is what it is, like. But I think we can say that with all the shows back in the 90s, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for me, Friends is something that I kind of like you and Frasier. I never really got into it. I don't know. My family was never really into it. I didn't watch it. My most distinct memory of Friends is that I had a grad student neighbor. So this is back when I was in grad school, in the penthouse of JHE. So JHE 370. I was in the little bowling alley, like the side office. I wasn't even in the main annex office. I got like shoved in like a side office. It was great. But there was only 5 of us in there. And 3 of them never came in because they worked only at night, right? So they would either come in at like midnight until 4 a.m. or they just wouldn't come in at all, except for this one student. And this one student was a bit different because I don't remember. I think their supervisor was Bob Pelton, but they had just immigrated from China, and they were like trying to learn English, I guess, same as you, like, in a bit of an accelerated way. And my most distinct memory of Friends is that he was there. His name was Alex, great guy.
I love Alex.
Except the one time he tried to microwave pizza wrapped in tinfoil in the microwave right behind me, and it started sparking and like exploding. So I had to tell him he can't do that. But he just sat there and watched Friends at lunch breaks, or like even in the evenings if I was there late and he was just like eating dinner, he would just be watching episodes of Friends with subtitles, but like in English, like the voices in English. So I guess he was like using that to like help him learn English, and he just like watched Friends all the time. And I even got a few laughs. I wasn't even watching it, but just like listening to it because it was in English, right? I got a couple of laughs out of it.
Does he not have his headphones on, or just like
no. Whatever, it's fine. So anyway, Friends is fine. I have nothing against it. I'm going to give it a C because I haven't really watched it very much. I've got nothing against Friends.
All right. So going in terms of the same era, the 90s, I think this show kind of transcends pop culture. So Seinfeld, what's your thought about Seinfeld?
So I never watched Seinfeld as a kid. And I only started watching it like reruns and stuff when I was an adult. Your mileage may vary on what adult means to you, but I remember my cousins. I'm very close with my cousins, and a few of them are considerably older than me, not like crazy older. Benjamin is like 3 years older than me, and Robert is like 5 or 6, 7. He's 7 years older than me. But they were like really into it. And whenever I would see them at like my grandparents' house, they would be talking about it. They would always watch it because we had Sunday dinners, and there was always be an episode of Seinfeld on, and The Simpsons as well. And I was always fascinated by it when I was a kid. And then looking back on it, or like watching it as a grown-up, you can see why it became such the thing that it became. Not necessarily because it itself is so amazing. It's got really great parts. Don't get me wrong. It had a pretty lousy series finale, to be honest, but like it has like those iconic scenes that like everybody understands, right? Or like basically it was like memes before memes even existed, right? Like recurring gags or jokes. The reason I think Seinfeld was so important is because it was kind of the first of its kind, right? Like you kind of had like Cheers sort of, but like Cheers wasn't really it. You had like MASH, but MASH was a little bit different too. And it was at the same time as like a show like Frasier, but like Seinfeld really was it touted itself as a show about nothing. And just like some of the stuff that it did was pretty groundbreaking in terms of that. So anyway, Seinfeld gets a B from me. It's not my favorite show, but it's a good show. It's good.
Yeah. So Seinfeld is probably similar to me as Frasier, right? Like I can't, like I didn't grow up watching it, and it wasn't super relatable. But to your point, I think it just added a lot to the sitcom genre, right? Like it's I guess a trailblazer in a sense. And so I mean, I watch again this past couple of weeks just to see what is Seinfeld, and you can see a lot of cultural references that we use now kind of like points back at Seinfeld. So because of that, it's not part of our judging criteria. I'll give it a B. Like it is funny, like but again, like I just don't have that attachment to it.
Yeah. Interestingly, because it's maybe the character that maybe reminds people of me the most, but I just like
Jerry?
Not Jerry. I don't know. I always thought that I was considered a Kramer. No, not a George. Although Jason Alexander represent. You love Jason Alexander in this country. But yeah, I don't know. Like when George naps under his desk and he has like an alarm clock and it's like ticking, and his boss Steinbrenner comes in and just hears the ticking and thinks that there's a bomb in Yankee Stadium, so they all have to like evacuate. It's just some of the stuff is ridiculous. But anyway, okay, so moving into some more modern things that maybe some of our listeners can relate to a bit more, not that they haven't watched those other shows before. Thoughts on the Big Bang Theory, Vince?
So I'm gonna have to agree with Genna here. Like the first few seasons was really good. Like I really enjoy it. And then I think the quality of it went down. And to Jenna's point, I think it's like instead of laughing with the characters, now you're laughing at the nerdiness of the characters. But I still enjoy it. I mean, Sam and I would sit and watch Big Bang Theory. It's something that we will watch. I thought the series finale was pretty good. With the Nobel Prize. Like a lot of stuff is obviously far-fetched, but it was enjoyable for the most part. Now I watched some on YouTube where it's like they took out the laughing track or the laughter track, and like it's unwatchable without the laughing track. Like just terrible. Like you know what I mean? Like,
isn't it amazing? And that's a good point. I'm going to interrupt for a second. I'm sorry, but like isn't it always the case that how funny you find something or how enjoyable you find something is a product of the atmosphere or people that you see it with? It really, really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
So like to that, like, so like I did enjoy it. I mean, so me and my other buddy, he had a PhD in inch phys, and like whenever we talk, and then with our friends there, like our friends were like, oh, it's like Big Bang Theory, like, you know, Sheldon and Leonard talking, and they would just make fun of us. So I was like, whatever, you know, like, so that's like part of the fabric of our life. So I'll give it a solid B as well, just because like if you take out the laugh track, and I would ask our audience or ask you to like Google that and find a video without the laugh track. It's just like you can't, like, it's not funny. Like it's like it's terrible. So I think the max I give it is a B.
Yeah, what are you having for breakfast, Sheldon? Cereal. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I never saw a whole lot. I saw the first couple seasons maybe of Big Bang Theory. I think I resisted the Big Bang Theory for the wrong reason, right? Like, so that's another Chuck Lorre show. And I say another, like, we haven't gone into any Chuck Lorre shows yet, but like like the whole concept of it being a comedy about, you know, the nerds or, you know, people that working in academia or whatever. I think I resisted watching it because everybody else thought it was popular and I just didn't want to be part of the sheep, you know? So I was just like, no, I don't want to watch Big Bang Theory. That's stupid. And so I never really gave it much of a chance. Whenever I saw pieces of it, it was like, fine. Right. And it lasted so long that like it had to have been pretty successful. Right. So anyway, I'm going to give Big Bang Theory a C. I don't give it, like, I have nothing against it. It's kind of the same as some other shows here, like Friends. I have nothing against Big Bang Theory. I did at the time. And I think that on reflection, I shouldn't have. Like, that's kind of dumb and childish to have that attitude. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the Big Bang Theory. Not very good.
Such deep thoughts about your own character.
You know,
over
sometimes you look back at things that you've done, right? And you're like, what the freaking heck was I doing? Like, why did I behave like that? Or why did I do that? It's crazy. Like, sometimes we coach T-ball, right? And like, kids are just doing things. And I stand there and stare at this kid who won't get out of the dirt and is like sifting dirt through their fingers. And I literally just asked them in a completely calm tone. I'm just like, why? Like, why? Can you explain to me what you're doing? And of course they can't. They say like it's fun or whatever, but I'm just like, I don't understand. And I don't necessarily mean like when I was a little kid. I'm talking about like, I don't know, like high school or universities. Like, why did I like act like that? Why did I say that mean thing to that person? That's not fair. Or, you know, I don't know, whatever. There, things got a little heavy. Take that. See if I freaking care.
Oh, so yeah. It got so
I've rattled you.
It goes so heavy. I was like, should I continue this heavy stream or should we just keep plow through?
No, get me out of here. Get me out, please. Thank you.
Okay. So let's keep going. After that deep self-reflection from Dr. Jignees, what's your thought on The Office?
So I love The Office. Office is great. I like the rhetoric surrounding The Office these days is like, ooh, you couldn't do that in 2021. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care though. Like, The Office is funny. The characters are great. The acting is good in The Office. Okay. So like the mockumentary, it's a tricky thing. We're going to get to Parks and Rec a little bit later on, right? But Parks and Rec attempted to do the same thing as The Office when it started out and then kind of changed a little bit to be just more of a comedy show. But like, they did not do well with that. Like, the mockumentary is hard. And full credit to Steve Carell for maybe creating one of the most goofy yet strikingly like makes you think character. Like, sometimes, right, Michael Scott would just say things that were so lucid and incredibly insightful that you'd just be like, oh, like, he's actually got it, but it's only once in a while, right? It's only enough that if you're paying attention, you would like notice it. And I loved it. And I loved how awkward he was able to make everything else. It was absolutely great. So, Dwight and Jim, those characters are fantastic. I liked all the little side characters. I love Stanley. I love Creed Bratton. Last person to steal from Creed Bratton. His name was Creed Bratton. Like, it's just fantastic stuff. Yeah. So The Office is my favorite show on this list. I will give The Office the S. I don't care what anybody else says. I love The Office.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. I just actually finished watching The Office all over again with my wife. So I would have to give it an S as well. The first season was a little bit more turbulent, but afterwards it was fantastic.
Yeah, and it struggled at the end a bit after Steve Carell left. Yeah, but still had funny episodes though.
But I would say that final episode, like that series finale, gold. Like yeah. Anyways, I actually got emotional when Michael Scott came back and
yeah.
Anyways, but like. Yeah, even the small things they did, like that they had those online series that tie you over during the summer, like where you just looked at the accountants or whatever. Like I watched everything, like with The Office. It was fantastic. Like it was just great, and I agree with you. I think Michael Scott was probably one of the best character in television. I don't know.
That is a hot take. I love it. I'm here for it. That's hot takes. Our cool guest has already left, but you're living up to the hype of the Heat Exchanger podcast. That is a hot take, and you are fully on point for me. I will not argue with you about that. That's a great.
Because anyways, let's get deep a little bit, right? Like there's the goofiness of Michael Scott, but there's that like compassionate and caring piece, and then like he just like brings all of this together, like that's lack of self-awareness, but then at points where like he becomes very self-aware. Like it's just that like it's like I think that the thing I love about The Office is like so like how human it was, right? And how like when we talk about relatable, I think that like that's what it is, right? Like, anyways, I can go on about The Office forever, so I'm gonna just stop here. So.
Yeah, just reminds me when you say like he's goofy, but he also has like he understands the people that he's working with, and also whatever. So like when they make their own paper company, and they steal his Rolodex, right? And the guy calls. This person like asks about the kids, and then he's like in the side camera thing, he's like, I don't understand, like they were so mad at me. And then it switches to Michael Scott. He's like, yeah, his kids, I highlighted that in green. Green means go ahead and don't talk about it. It's just like, it's great. And the cold opens to The Office are some of the best 90 seconds of television that you'll ever see, are just like a compilation of cold opens from The Office. They're great. So anyway, so we can keep going, but we won't. We'll move on a little bit more than halfway through now to Community. How do you feel about Community?
So Community has two phases for me. Like the first few seasons, I really enjoyed it. And then I don't know why I just stopped really caring about Community. I know like the thing with Community is that there's like cult following, right? Like that there's like this small group of people, or maybe like, maybe not small, but like just really, 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 really enjoy Community. I thought it was funny. Like I said, I thought that the first two season in particular was funny. I really like Troy and Abed, but I think the whole series as a whole, I would give it a what I gave the other ones B's. This was between an A and a B for me. So
okay. I thought you were between B and C. So.
No, like it's so like. I would have to say I like it more than Seinfeld because I actually watch Community more, right? So but B plus.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting, hot take style. Community for me did the opposite of you. I did not like the first season of Community at all. And I kind of forced myself to watch into season 2 when it got a little bit better. And I know that the first season wasn't very long, and it got a little bit better in season 2. And then it was kind of the same as you. I kind of like fizzled out with it. It's one of those ones where my friends talk about it all the time, or like people are always talking about, oh, have you seen this or whatever? And, it was kind of like, well, have you watched Breaking Bad or something? You know, it's like, it's just one of those shows that everybody was watching, and I just couldn't relate to it. Much like I didn't relate to Breaking Bad, actually. Little sidebar there is like, I didn't even really like that show very much. And so
that's a hot take.
Well, you know, come at me, see if I care. But yeah, Community, I don't know. It can have it's between a C and a D for me, actually. So I'm going to give it the C. I think it deserves a little more credit. Was it Joel McHale? Who's the main character? Yeah,
Joel McHale.
I hate that freaking guy. Okay. Sorry, Joel McHale.
You don't
I got
like
nothing against you as a person. If you listen to this podcast, just in case it's the year 2050 and you've literally ran out of content on the internet and you're listening to this right now, I have nothing against you as a person. I just didn't like the show. It's not your fault. I just don't like it. I'm sorry. So, you know, give it the D.
Give it the D. Yeah. So let's get a little bit more recent. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, who's heading into their final season this year.
Yeah. Brooklyn Nine-Nine has had its ups and downs, but it overall is a very funny show. Yeah. I thought, so here's the thing. Here's the redeeming story for me of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm going to give Brooklyn Nine-Nine an A. I can't give it the highest grade, but I'm going to say that it's the same as Frasier for me. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a funny show that I loved watching. And the thing that made it even better is that I went into Brooklyn Nine-Nine thinking I was going to hate it. And instead, I loved it. So the juxtaposed feelings of like, I am not going to like this, into like, oh my God, I completely misjudged this show, like, you know, judge a book by its cover sort of thing, was incredible for me. Like that feeling was unbelievable. So the reason I didn't want to watch it was because I wasn't a big fan of Andy Samberg. Right. And like, you know, the Lonely Ocean music videos, which can be very funny, by the way, but like, it's not really my style of comedy, you know, that sort of thing. And I a huge fan of any of his other work up until that point. And, you know, knowing that he was like involved in, I don't know. I like Joe Latruglio. I love Wet Hot American Summer, like everything to do with that. And Joe Latruglio was in that too. But I mean, I didn't expect it to be very good. And then right out of the gate in the very first episode, it was so funny. And so for me, I've loved Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think Brooklyn Nine-Nine is very funny. Again, it's something that me and my wife would sit down and watch. I mean, like we watch a lot of just comedy at night. Like she doesn't really like any intense.
You don't like sitting down with your wife after dinner?
No. Like I mean, she doesn't like sitting down with me, right? So like, you know, like like I really like, you know, cerebral, like more suspenseful shows. Like, you know, I watch like procedurals, like, you know, Blacklist and things like that. Like she would have nothing to do with like cop shows in it, but like except for this cop show, which is Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and she thinks it's really funny, and I think it's really funny. What we really, I mean, I think our favorite character is Captain Holt. He's
so good.
He's so good, like so good. We're kind of sad that like Genna left, right? Like, is it?
Yeah, the human embodiment of the 100 emoji, Genna Linetti.
Yeah, the queen bee. Yeah. So it's like, but I think overall, I really enjoy Michael Schur's like stuff. Like, so most fruits. Yeah. So I mean, The Office is Michael Schur, and then Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right? So
right. Parks and Rec too, right?
Parks and Rec, and then like. The one that didn't make our list today, like The Good Place, I enjoyed The Good Place too.
I think Laura. So that's one of those shows that I've seen come across the screen on Netflix, and I would like ask Laura, but Laura's seen it, so I don't want to. We don't tend to watch things that one of us has seen already. So that's I've never seen The Good Place, but yeah.
So Brooklyn Nine-Nine would be an A, and we're looking forward to the final season. So nice.
All right, so taking a hard right turn, okay? We're going back to some Chuck Lorre. You know, I'm a big fan of Chuck Lorre. 2.5 Men. How are we feeling about 2.5 Men?
Yeah, again, like it's not a show that I watched a lot. I mean, it was on TV before, I guess Netflix was a thing. So like, you know, you flip through and it's like, oh, like it's something on TV. I guess I'm waiting for another show to come on, and I'll look at it. Never really got into it. I actually hate all the characters on it. Like it's just it's just terrible. So I would give it a solid F.
a solid F. Now you got the F, but it's a good F. You should be proud of that F.
Like just the character. Like I mean, they're all like douchebags. So it's like I just can't. Like I just can't do it. Like, so
no, I totally agree.
And like Charlie Sheen somehow turned into like Ashton Kutcher for like.
Yeah, the most clunky rewriting of a character of all time. So like Charlie Sheen gets caught like doing all kinds of drugs and like OD is put in rehab. So they need somebody else. And so in the show, they just write him out that he like just died. And then Ashton Kutcher moves in because he owns the house now, apparently. And everybody like somehow this all just like works. And yeah, I mean, 2.5 Men is that's brutal. So like it's the same, like Two Broke Girls is the same to me. It's like it's the antithesis of Frasier, right? Like it's not dry at all. It's just like lowbrow, just humor. I bet, I have no idea. You should look this up on YouTube, see if it exists. I bet if you watched 2.5 Men without the laugh track, it would be even worse than Big Bang Theory without the laugh track. Like I can only imagine how bad.
I mean, it's unwatchable even with the laugh track.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay, good. So we had to give something the torch there. So
was it an F as well?
Yeah. Like I also grew up in a house with Brad Neese. Okay, Brad Neese, my dad. I love him to death. But like, I think
shout out our loyal listener. Brad Neese.
Shout out to Brad Neese. And Val, I hope you guys are both doing well. But if like I swear, if I was a teenager or whatever in high school and I had 2.5 Men on at any point in the living room and my dad walked by, I think my dad would have like kicked me, like because he like hated that brain melting kind of garbage. He's the kind of guy that would really limit my screen time and stuff, which in retrospect is great. And that's good for you. But like, man, he would never be caught dead watching a show like that. And he's one of the reasons that I like Frasier so much, right? Because my dad was into Cheers and Frasier and that sort of thing. And so like, it was like kind of an unspoken rule in my house that you don't watch 2.5 Men or like you just don't turn it on or you're going to be judged. So anyway, okay. Moving back to something else.
Yeah.
You're up.
So what's your thought on Modern Family?
I like Modern Family. It's good. It's great. It's got good characters. I think the character that I literally relate the most to out of any character in any show that we've talked about has to be Phil Dunphy. He's just like the goofy, he's got a positive attitude. I like to think that I have a pretty positive attitude. I know you probably are used to seeing the cynical side of me in like department meetings and stuff where I'm just kind of like angry about the state of education at the university with this pandemic because I'm just tired of it. But really, I do like to just do funny things and like just have fun with my friends and just try cool things. So I relate a lot to.
You do magic?
I don't do magic. I did when I was a kid, right? Like, didn't everybody? Like when I was in daycare, like summer camp, day camp, or whatever you want to call it. When I was like, I don't know, 9-10 years old, we went to these like day-long camps, and my buddies and I would put on like magic shows and stuff. It was great. But Modern Family is pretty good. It did a really good job of adapting with the age of the characters as they grew up, right? So there were a couple of things that were pretty clunky. I think that the way that they handled Alex's character was like pretty clunky. Like later on, she just became this like sex crazed, like kind of creeper or something. It was kind of weird.
Out of the blue, right? Like,
I was just like,
she was always this like, studious nerd, and then just like, oh, okay. University changed her,
Yeah. I don't really know what, as it does to us all. I don't really know if I'm on board with that too much, but I guess she kind of did the opposite of Haley, right? So Haley turned into kind of like a mom, like clueless, but still like obviously well-intentioned sort of thing later on. But yeah, I like Modern Family. I'll give Modern Family I'll give it a B. I've already given out 2 A's and an S. So Modern Family, I think I would put it just below Frasier and just below The Office, but it's still really good, worth your time if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, and then I agree. Again, it's one of the show that we watch quite often and really like grew with the characters. I think this show was interesting to me because like the kids in the show were very, very small, right? Like they were very little at the beginning, and then you saw the characters develop, and like both on and off the show. And that was very interesting to me. But I think you're right. I think they handled their maturing well. I think did Lily change character? Like I feel like the baby Lily was a different.
I think you're right.
Different person than later. But like I never really got into the Lily character. She was like just someone there. But I think all the other characters were great. Yeah. This would be an A for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's good. I don't really fully recall like the final season. I thought it was okay. Like it's not like The Office where it's like, you know, even the last episode was like, you know, ingrained into my mind. But this is a good show. Like, you know, if I have nothing better to do, I would sit down and watch an episode. It's something that I would do, right? So, so it's an A.
Yeah, it's got like so many like really funny jokes like that are just kind of like seeded in there that you never like. I remember, I don't know why you brought this to me because you said like growing with the characters, and I think of like Luke when Luke was 8 years old.
Yeah, before he was jacked.
Yeah, exactly. And he had like $100 frozen in the freezer, and then the reason was because he wanted to hide it, but he also wanted to stay liquid, so he had to like bring it out of the freezer. He's like, I like to stay liquid, and I was just like, oh my God, that's just so funny. I like, how do you come up with something like that? But oh man. Okay, last but not least, it's your turn. We're gonna go back to a Dan Schur.
Dan Gore.
Excuse me?
Dan Gore.
Dan Gore. Sorry. Dan Gore. Parks and Rec. Last but not least.
Yeah. So the first season was pretty unwatchable for me.
Totally agree. But that's the season where they tried to copy The Office. Right?
Exactly, right? So I mean, and everybody was like, oh, they're just trying to be The Office and they suck, right? I think they start picking it up in second and third season. I mean, everybody loves, what's his name?
Ron Swanson?
No. Oh, yeah, obviously.
Nick Offerman?
Nick Offerman. He's the man, right? And then I also like what's the Star-Lord guy?
Chris Pratt?
Chris Pratt and Andy
and
April. Andy and April.
Yeah.
Was pretty funny. And obviously there's Leslie, right? So I'll give it a B. Like it's just that first season, it was a grind. You know, like it was just like
yeah. I watched that show, and I watched that show in spite of Amy Schumer. No disrespect. Or Amy Poehler, not Amy Schumer. God. But like Leslie Knope's character just wasn't for me. A little over the top, right? You can understand what,
like, she's trying to be Michael Scott, but like Michael Scott, no one can be Michael Scott.
Yeah. It's just a little bit over the top, right? Like talking about how like she stayed up 4 nights in a row to make this 800-page binder of like color coded, and I'm just like, okay, like you've done that enough times. It's not really a recurring gag that I'm down for. But I think Ron, like Nick Offerman's character, Ron Swanson, it's so funny. Like it's just great. I think Chris Pratt got better, right? I didn't like Chris Pratt's character early on, and then got better. I think, you know, Tom Haverford also got better a little bit, but it was just a little bit painful at some points or whatever. But overall, and I loved Ben. And like when Ben Wyatt came into the picture, and then also Chris Traeger. What's his name? What's the guy that plays Chris Traeger? Help me out. His name was Rob Lowe. Yeah, there you go. Okay, Rob Lowe. He was pretty funny too. So I like the introduction of those characters and stuff. I think it worked out pretty well. So I'm going to give Parks and Rec a B. I almost quit halfway through the first season, and then somebody, I think it was Emma, shout out to Emma, told me that she loves that show, and she told me to stick with it, and I did, and I'm glad I did. So that was good advice. So.
Like I tried watching it with Sam multiple times, and she just cannot get through the first season. Like, it's not funny. I was like, okay, I guess I'll stop watching with you. You know? Well, that's it.
So we gave out a lot of A's and B's and an S, and we did not really give out any bad grades. So next time we should.
I mean, we effed 2.5 Men, right? So
We F 2.5. Yeah, but that's like, I don't know. Is that a good tier list where it's like kind of like it's got like, think of that. It's the bathtub distribution, right? You got like the stack up there in the A's and S's, and then there's like nothing in the C's and D's. I don't think we gave it a single. Maybe we gave it a D. But anyway, and like, and then the 1F. But anyway, whatever. We don't know what we're doing, and I don't care. I'm not going to record this because that's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
So,
and we're not going to show any graphics to this. So there you
go. No. The people have been asking for graphics. Hey, we're up to like almost 40 subscribers, by the way. We should do a 40 subscriber milestone special.
How is 40 a milestone? Like, at least go to 50, you know, like
40. I can make a milestone out of whatever I want, man. Forget it. Okay. Yeah. So who knows? I think it was 38 last time I checked, but hopefully people enjoyed that. So why don't we take a quick break and come back for closing remarks?
Sounds good.
Okay. See you, buddy.
See ya.
All right. Well, Vince, we have made it to the end of episode 3. Congratulations.
Yeah, that was a fun episode with our fantastic guest, Genna, and just some discussion about sitcoms and the Blue Jays. So altogether, a good time. Yeah.
Hey, good luck to the Blue Jays. We'll get another episode in of the Heat Exchanger before the school year begins. And then I think our plan is to throttle back to about 1 episode a month, give or take.
Yeah. So, I mean, that gives the viewers or the listeners maybe like, you know, every week you could listen to 30 minutes and then there you go. And then you'll hear us again the next month, you know?
Oh, I thought we were actually going to do an 8-hour show once a month just because we could do it all in one sitting with a couple of Monster energy drinks, but that's fine. Yeah, no. Okay. Regular episode once a month. And hopefully the Blue Jays, we can talk about them
into October
playing some meaningful baseball. That'd be pretty cool. Now I did want to mention that the viewership numbers are doing the usual YouTube slide. Okay. It's called the YouTube slide. It's called exponential decay. All right. 1ZC3, look it up, or 1ZB3, look it up. I don't know, whichever one isn't linear algebra. Exponential decay of like 650 views on episode 1, and then like 190 on episode 2. So that retention is not that great. And then we'll see if this one gets down to like 50. It's like factor of 3, factor of 4 decay each time. So hopefully
it's like the opposite of COVID numbers, you know?
Yeah. Don't even get me started. But yeah, no, if you did listen until the end, we would like to thank you. We'd like to thank Genna as well for her time. And yeah, it's been a good time. So I guess we'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.
See you all next time. Bye.
It's the only reason you know what the word ternary means. I would like to emphasize that that's the only thing you learned from that, right? Like that's like the other side joke here, right? Is that like you don't know anything about ternary phase diagrams, but you had to
except for the word.
Except for you had to figure out what ternary meant so that you knew what you were talking about, right? So I'm so on like the professionalism of this podcast is like not great. Okay, so we're doing our best. Okay, we're gonna try that again. You get a third crack, and I want this whole thing to go off in one take now. Okay.
Third time's the charm.
Sounds good.
Jeez.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
No worries.